This is a global original podcast. Hello, my name is Glenister. Welcome to Influence, the global podcast that shines a spotlight on the influencer marketing industry. I'm the co-founder of BCMA Influence, which is a professional membership association that represents the influencer marketing industry. And my objective is to interview some of the most interesting people in the world of influencer marketing. And in the next 30 minutes, get real insights, ideas and tips to help you better understand the fascinating world of influence. Today I want to talk about risk, and particularly from an influencer's point of view. And let's be honest, no one wants to pay for insurance. But when you think of some of the areas an influencer can be exposed, particularly on a brand partnership, it's really important to look at this right now. And I want to look at the areas of advertising, publishing, regulatory and reputational risk. So who better to ask than the wonderful Claire Templeton from insurance underwriters Beazley to try and make sense of it all.
I'm a media and entertainment underwriter, so I specialise in all things media and content related. Our appetite is extremely broad. Our clients extend from publishers, broadcasters, advertising agents, studios, esport organisers, and anything and everything creative. And it led us on to wanting to target a specific other area as well, such as influencers. We were seeing a lot more queries coming in from influencers, and we wanted to make sure we could offer them a product that would tick the boxes for them as they started to grow and deal with the risk that they face day to day. Beazley is a large worldwide insurance company. Beazley and Lloyd's syndicate with a 2 billion revenue, half of which is especially lines such as financial, EPO and cyber. So we're not just a media specialist. We do everything and everything. We're not consumer facing. We are product led, which makes London, US, rest of the world very joined up. And we have claims managers across the world, so we like to make sure that we have the right people doing the right things. And we're particularly big in cyber, which is probably like the jewel in the Beazley crown. But my particular media sector is specialist sector is media.
What sort of claims or risks are you involved with?
Well, the ones that we see mostly from advertising relate to breach of contract traditionally. There's been some high-profile cases in the press for many years, because even before influencers became a thing, the brands would always associate with high profile people and celebrities to be spokespersons for their brands. And so, as it's progressed, they've realised that they can get as much impact, or a really good impact with direct advertising with influencers. And so, a good example would be a claim which arose even before influencers came about with Nicole Kidman. So it was a good few years ago now, and she was at the time the spokesperson and the face for Chanel No. 5. And it was reported in the press during one of her premieres that she had been seen to be dabbing on frequently the Jo Malone, I think it was the white and mint jasmine scent, and they alleged that it was her favourite scent and that she was just going around town saying it was fabulous. And now, as the spokesperson of Chanel No. 5, that might not go down very well with your brand. And the brand deal that she had at that point was worth $12 million to her. It was alleged that Chanel No. 5 might not be happy with this, and that it could be a breach of contract. So Nicole Kidman was obviously furious, and she sued the Daily Telegraph that had published this article. And it was found to be false and that the details are incorrect. And so the Daily Telegraph had to pay out substantial fees to her, which she donated to charity, I understand. And it's just easy to see how something that could be reported innocently could potentially result in a breach of contract claim, and could easily cost a lot of money for an influencer, for example, to have to defend and settle. It's very tricky. It's an expensive one that they could happen. The other thing is they could bring a brand into disrepute as well. An influencer could say something about a brand which is untrue and not realise that they could imply something was tested on animals, for example, and so then they could be sued for a breach of contract. So it's a costly matter.
And more to the point, Claire, what happens when follower of the influencer reacts badly to a product in some shape or form? I.e., it's a skincare and they've had a rash or they've had a really bad reaction to something, or that it hasn't worked, it's broken, or what happens, and they then go on to the influencer's feed and say, you know what, this is rubbish.
Well, that's a very unfortunate situation to find themselves in. And the first thing I show is that we have a bodily injury and property damage exclusion in the policy wording. So if it's just arising from the product that they're promoting, I'm afraid the policy wouldn't respond in that respect. And I think quite rightly so if they're simply discussing and promoting a product that's been created and engineered by a third-party brand. If a consumer has a reaction to that, then that's something they should possibly go back to the brand to. If they're giving advice on how to do something, so something we can look to cover, and we may consider doing that, is if they're giving instructions on how to do something, but the instructions they give are negligent or accidentally they give the wrong information, and then as a result they're then injured as a result of the content, that could be something that could be picked up by the policy. And that's something that could be a real concern for an influencer, because they're not likely going to have the funds to defend claims arising from consumers hurting themselves. So there are rules and regulations that they need to adhere to with regard promoting of things like health food brands and alcohol and advertising to children. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But there are rules and regulations that they do need to stick to, but they do need to be cautious because some insurance won't be able to protect them. So that is something definitely to bear in mind as an influencer.
What other areas pop up in some of the claims, particularly when it comes to publishing? It's
funny to think that so many influencers don't realise that, in fact, they're considered publishers. And often their followers dwarf the number of readers of newspapers. And so their reach and scope is amazing, but they don't realise that they're on for it as a publisher risk. So there's been a number of publisher-related defamation or privacy type claims in relation to social media and influencers. Probably the most high profile a while ago was the Sally Bercow and Lord McAlpine issue, where Sally Bercow, who was the then wife of the Speaker of the House of Commons, she was a well-known celebrity in her own right as well, and had decided to comment on her Twitter page following a BBC Two Newsnight show about a high-profile politician who was being accused of being a paedophile. And in her infinite wisdom, she decided to tweet, "Why is Lord McAlpine trending? Little asterisk, innocent face, question mark." I mean, it was very clear, I think, personally, what she was intending, and I think that's what the rest of the industry came to. But it was taken to court. She was sued for defamation by Lord McAlpine, and it was a very serious breach. And it was found by the Lord Justice Tugendhat that the comment that she put out was indeed a serious defamation. And she had to pay costs to Lord McAlpine, which I believe he donated to charity as well. But not only the legal cost, but the settlement is sometimes the small amount. The defence costs to get to that point. So that's the part that influencers need to think about. Even if you're putting a comment out there that you don't intend to be defamatory, or you don't realise is direct, even if you're not directly accusing somebody of something, you could still be found to be a publisher of a comment which results in defamation. And then you're going to have to pay out a lot of legal costs, which is where the money really racks up, and then settlement fees as well. So it's something to really be cautious of when you're putting something out there on social media, that you need to be confident of what you're saying, and that you need to be not putting somebody in a defamatory, painting them in a bad light. There's another issue with publishing as well. I mean, there's many, but not just defamation. There was a US chat show host called Conan O'Brien, I think his name is, and he was sued by a social media user called Robert Alex Caseberg for theft of 5 jokes. So Caseberg had put out some jokes across his social media on Twitter, and allegedly within a few hours or a few days, Conan O'Brien had used those jokes or extraordinarily similar jokes on his chat shows. And so it was alleged that it was either Conan had taken them or his writers of the show had taken them. Now, this was something that was brought about 5 years ago, and it took the case 4 years to settle. So imagine the cost of having to defend. So even just getting a lawyer's letter to go back and say, no, I didn't have access to this Twitter account, or I did have access to this Twitter account. So just taking something and using it as your own, if someone else has published it first, could be a very costly matter for an influencer.
How can influencers protect themselves from
It's a very hard thing to do. When you see your content being used by somebody else, particularly for financial gain, it's a personal attack. You've worked hard on your designs and your content, whatever it is you've put out there. And quite rightly, it's yours. So, such as the example of those 5 jokes that were stolen and used for their own gain. So in the event that that happens, it's sort of a decision between, have you got the funds to go against them, because you have every right to sue them for a breach of copyright, but that is a costly thing. So that's something that I'm investigating at the moment, actually, for an insurance add-on. So that's a really timely question to ask, Gordon, because I am interested in it, and I'm trying to work out how we can offer that for our clients. It's sort of a watch this space moment, actually. So
well, that's good. And the other area that I'm particularly concerned about is cloning, where an influencer has amassed a large audience, particularly on Instagram, and all of a sudden there are second versions of that, and that could mislead audiences in thinking, well, that actually is her, when it isn't.
It's a new area, so it's not something that's been tested so far, but I did talk to our cyber guys, and it is certainly something that could be considered, because if they're hacked, for example, so driving the traffic away was something that was an interesting comment there. So if they've been hacked and the good traffic is being directed away from their site onto a fake site, if they have the correct insurance in place, there might be something that could help with the stopping that bad traffic and redirecting of the good traffic. If they've been hacked and some data has been stolen, perhaps they've got some client lists that they had which have been taken and then being used elsewhere. Our legal costs and forensics could be helping with that. But it's a very tricky one. There's lots of investigation that could happen, and then they might need to go back to each platform to get those sites shut down. So by no means am I an expert on it. I could certainly get some nice cyber people to come and talk to you, Gordon, if you want to have a bit more information. But I can understand it would be a very troubling matter, because monetization of your content is the key thing for you as an influencer. And if someone's taking that good money, good traffic, and monetizing it elsewhere, that's a real bugbear, I can imagine.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the regulatory areas of risk. What's your take on that?
This is so easy done, and I really feel for influencers when this happens sometimes, because you're very, very busy creating a lot of content, and you want your content to be great and you want it to be eye-catching. But there is the issue that if they don't do the right things, then they're going to get in trouble, basically. So what we've seen is things like failure to disclose endorsements. You're going to get high-profile cases of these as well. So, for example, the Mrs. Hinch one, which was very well reported in the press, that she was being investigated for promoting some cleaning products without making it very clear. Now, that could be a costly thing for an influencer to have to deal with. We do offer and can offer a ASA investigatory defence sublimit. Now, we don't cover the final penalty because that's uninsurable. It's intended to be a punishment for doing something wrong. So that's quite right. We can't cover that part. If they feel confidently that they haven't breached, actually, no, they didn't do this, it was something completely unintentional. And if you look here, or we did it across this platform, they want to investigate that. We've got a sublimit within our policy form which would allow the influencer to carry on going about their day-to-day business and use this sublimit to help investigate why they think they didn't breach, and help with that information to be reported back to the ASA, for example. If at the end of it was found they decided, no, you did breach, then so be it. That's fine. They've tried to fight their corner, and they will have to pay that final penalty. But they haven't had to pay the costs getting to that point of defending it. Hopefully, it will be a wonderful case of we provide you some money to, some assistance to be able to defend yourself, and you right your wrong. So that's great. There are other areas that need to be cautious of. Things like advertising to children, very restricted. They're a vulnerable group. The ASA look at that very carefully. There are very strict rules in place, so they do need to be careful about that. And other things like advertising of alcohol, another key area, because they're looking out for things like being cautious of endorsing binge drinking or underage drinking. So things like that, if you're putting out content about alcohol or advertising to children, you need to be particularly careful about those matters.
So let's just assume then the influencer has done a deal with an alcoholic drink or a gaming brand or whatever, and hasn't disclosed. They've done it with the brand. They should have disclosed, but they haven't. Who's going to bring the claim?
The public will make a complaint. The ASA do investigate as well. So if it has been made aware, if they've been made aware in one way or another, they will investigate. They have the power to do so. But broadly, the public will see something. They will be unhappy about it. They will report them to the ASA. The ASA then will investigate.
They will investigate, but that doesn't mean to say that they will actually take legal action.
The ASA would be responsible for bringing a final penalty. So they wouldn't be bringing a legal action per se, they would be bringing a final penalty. It would be hard to see how, if they were advertising to children and someone just didn't like it for some reason, they wouldn't really be able to sue them unless they could find something that they'd done. They'd breached contract, or they'd intentionally defamed somebody, or they'd lied or something. So a member of the public or a group would have to find something the influencer had, concrete had done that they could then sue them for. The main issue here would be a regulatory issue.
From some reputational point of view, what are the sorts of things that you've noticed where an influencer's reputation can be damaged? To
be honest, influencers are broadly very, very clever, sensible people. They want to protect their brand. They are, they're a business at the end of the day. They are very good. But occasionally something does slip through the net, and that does happen. They are human beings, and that's quite right. The first thing I should say, though, is that cover for influencers' own losses of income, if they were dropped by a brand, for example, for something they've said or done, is not available. We're not looking to help them, if they want to get out of a deal, or they say something and then they say, because I said this, I've lost this. That's not something we're looking to cover. What we want to try to do is to try to help them become whole again. So if they've said something, we want them to try and get over that and keep going, and just keep going with this wonderful brand they've created. There's been lots of high profile ones. We've seen things like PewDiePie was probably one of the most well-known, fall from grace, having a very well-established gaming and everything else influencer reputation, and then suddenly commenting on things that he shouldn't have been commenting on. Unfortunately, his reputation was damaged quite irreparably from that. There's things like the Fire Festival as well. There was so many influencers and celebrities and social media content creators who were involved, unfortunately, with the Fire Festival, and they commented, and they all had to do quite extensive work following the Fire Festival debacle, because they had to, for example, I think one of the Jenner sisters had to say that the fees that they'd been given, they donated to charity, and they were unaware. So their PR team worked very hard after that came out to rebuild their their reputation and relationship with their consumers, to say, we were innocent in this, we didn't really realise what was happening, hands up and we're sorry. So that's the thing that an influencer needs to be cautious of. If they say something or do something, it's how they act directly after that and how they build from that. We offer a crisis management cover within our form for influencers, because
that's good.
Yeah, it's a bit of the, oh God, what have I done moment? What and who do I call? So we've partnered with a global crisis assistant company worldwide, who are on the end of the phone. So if they say or do something and they realise that someone said you shouldn't have said that, or I'm unhappy with the way that you've said this about me, they can phone this telephone number, talk to PR specialists, emergency global crisis people who go, right, I can review your account, I can take over it, I can help you, I can give you guidance about what to do next, and just give them that sort of arm around the shoulder moment where they say, look, it's okay, you've messed up, but let's help you get through this. So there's lots of things that influencers can do. I mean, Gary Barlow, for example, and others were involved in the tax issue, and he's doing a fantastic job. His PR team went to town and just did a great job after that event. And it's the same thing for influencers. You do something wrong, if it was a real innocent error, they apologise, you put the next steps in, and then let's just keep going. Let's keep going as a business and a brand and see how we can keep it going.
And I think some of the bigger influencers that have got talent agencies that have in-house PR, I think they are somewhat protected, and that's why they're engaged with that. I think my concern is the sort of micro influencers that may be doing things really innocently, but of course the law, that's no defence.
It's not. It's helpful to show that if you're, it's not a defence, but if someone's genuinely, I always think that's the point of insurance. If someone has genuinely made an error, and we want to try to help them, if it's, if we can get it triggering the policy, let's help them. And I think, like you say, for nano and micro influencers who don't have a big talent management team or a big PR team sitting behind them, just a friendly, handhold in these situations is what's needed, I think, sometimes.
And what sort of, some people are thinking, well, what does it cost me to have an insurance policy now? And what are the sorts of bolt-ons? Are you able to give us a bit of a steer on that?
Yeah, so we write influencers worldwide, we write nano, micro, huge influencers. We write celebrities as well, so music artists for their social media and their promotion. So we do anything from very small to very, very large. Something that I'm particularly excited about, and we've launched last year, was a collaboration with a company called Assured Social, which is a online platform for influencers to go on and purchase insurance very easily, quickly. They answer 3-4 questions, I think it is, and they just click and buy. And then the policy is, you put your credit card details in and your policy documents are sent straight to your phone. It starts off at something like £120, in fact, Gordon. So it's a very affordable, it's the right price for the right target group. The limits start, I think, at £100,000. You can get £100,000, £250,000 or £500,000 limits. So it depends on what your brands are, what you're being asked to purchase. But we wanted to make sure we were able to get into these micro and nano influencers and others, big and small, and give them a policy that they can afford and not just think it is out of reach. They need to have insurance, and they should be able to afford it and know that it's with a company that understands them and wants to help.
This podcast is supported by the Branded Content Marketing Association, promoting the value of influencer marketing globally.
That's it for another edition of Influence. Please don't forget to subscribe and let us have your feedback to our email, feedback@influencepodcast.net. Or you can go on to the BCMA website, www.thebcma.info. You can also send me a message on my Instagram too, which is Gordon Glenister. And if you feel like it would be great if you could leave us a 5-star review. That would be awesome, because it really does help us. Thanks also to my producer, Neil Whiteside of Freedom One. So until next time, from me, Gordon Glenister, bye for now.